Out here, the woods don't lie. Every trail tells a story, and we're here to read it. This is the Field Days Podcast, where passion meets habitat. Hosted by Jason Say, whitetail enthusiast and food plot guru. Brought to you by Magnet Outdoors Premium Food Plot Seeds, because big bucks start with a well-planned strategy.
Hello and welcome to the Field Days Podcast. This is our episode 2 of our fall series. We do 14 of these a year. We do 7 in the spring and 7 in the fall. These are all fall topics. As most of you know, I kicked off with my partners, Wilson and Steve Scott and Josh, our seed company, Magnet Outdoors. Super excited. I wanted to say to everybody out there that has purchased seed and has supported me, I truly appreciate the response has been overwhelming, to say the least. So we're super excited about Magnet Outdoors, even more excited to, one, see those pictures start rolling in with guys' food plots, and then two, hopefully seeing lots of dead deer on the ground. So anyway, I just want to say thanks real quick to all those guys that are supporting me. This show's gonna be a little bit different. The first part of the show, what I want to talk about today, I get a lot of questions on this, from the property consults I do to just, online emails, things like that, is stand placement. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. It's that time of year we're all getting out. It's beginning, it's July here, and everybody's starting to hang their stands. And so I wanted to really get in depth, talk about stand placement. So the first part of the show is going to be me just talking. I have an outline of things that I want to go over that I do. Then the second half of the show, we have a big announcement. We have a new sponsor here at Field Days, and we're going to have Emmanuel on here in the second part of the show to talk about that product, which I'm super excited about. I don't want to spoil it, but man, it is an awesome product, and I'm super excited. I've been using it for years, and I'm super excited to have them as a sponsor. So we're going to do that in the second part of the show. Also have a couple of great questions from some of our listeners that we do each episode. And I'd tell you, if you have a question for me, feel free to send it in. Jason at fielddaysmedia.com. Get lots of questions. I usually try and take 2 or 3 every show. So if you have a question for me you'd like me to read on the podcast and answer, I'd be happy to do it. So we're going to take a quick break here, say thanks to a couple of our sponsors, and get right into talking about stand placement and the things I do when I'm looking at, not only stand placement, but where I'm going to put a food plot based on that. So we'll be right back. We're going to thank a couple sponsors.
There's nothing more I love than chasing big bucks, and one of the biggest game-changing products for me and making me more successful is Moultrie Mobile cellular trail cameras. Anybody knows big mature whitetail, especially in high-pressure states like Pennsylvania, they're not going to put up with much from humans. So the best thing we can do is stay out of the woods, stay out of that property when it gets close to hunting season, and the Moultrie Mobile cellular trail cameras have been a game changer for me. They have affordable plans, great cameras. I encourage you to check out the entire line at MoultrieMobile.com. I am happy to announce a brand new sponsor here at the Field Days Podcast, and it is 12 Point Hunting Blinds. And I've had the privilege of hunting out of these blinds for the last couple of years, and I was on a property consult earlier this year, and I asked my client what he did for a living, and he said he was one of the owners of 12 Point Hunting Blinds, and my eyes lit up, and I said, we need to talk. And we need to talk because these are the best blinds that I have ever hunted out of. They've thought of every little detail, from just the silent technology, the easy access, and I truly believe that their blinds are completely scent proof. I've so many times had deer directly downwind that never smelled us. So I encourage you, check them out, find out for yourself. But again, hands down, best hard-sided hunting blind I've ever hunted out of. For more information on all their blinds, visit 12pointhuntingblinds.com.
Okay, we are back. And before we get into talking about, what I want to talk about today, and that's stand placement and things like that, I did want to tell everybody I've got questions on this, and I apologize to guys because they've been listening. We are doing the Whitetail Habitat Extravaganza this year. It's going to be near the end of January. All the information is on the magnetoutdoors.com website. You can find the tickets. You can buy tickets there. It will sell out. I did this a few years ago. I sold out in like 6 hours. Now we do have a much bigger venue. We can fit about 500 people. It's going to be an entire day. We're going to have 2 different guest speakers. I'm going to be talking on food plots, food plot strategy, hunting, different techniques, things like that. Then we also have another guest speaker who's going to be solely focused on habitat improvement, from timber stand improvement to controlled burns, all the things you hear from Hack and Squirt, different things like that. He's going to go over all those things and help you be a better habitat manager. So the day is going to be, it's going to be a full day. I'm going to tell you, you're going to want to bring your notebook and your pen. We're going to have a bunch of different, some different vendors there that you can get. There's going to be some good deals going on there. So anyway, you can see all the information at magnetoutdoors.com. You can get the information there, buy your tickets. I would not wait. Again, it's going to be the end of January, I believe January 31st. But don't quote me on that. It's the last Saturday of January here in Northwest Pennsylvania, in Shippenville, Pennsylvania. We're going to fit about 500 people, but we do know it will sell out. So that, I just wanted to give a plug before I got into it, and let's get started and let's talk about stand placement. So I get this a lot and I see it a lot. And so I want to address it. And a lot of guys, I'm going to start with this. They say, hey, I've been reading online and a guy told me I should never hunt my food plots. I should get off the food plots and hunt the travel corridors to the food sources. And so I'm going to address that first. And when you see people giving, sometimes that information is correct. That advice would be correct. Many times it's wrong, in my opinion. And here's what I'm going to say. So the scenario where that would be correct, there's a couple scenarios. One is if maybe you only have one food plot or two food plots. A food plot a stand directly on a food plot is no different than a stand off the travel corridor. If you go hunt the same stand over and over and over again, you will see less and less deer. I want to say something in my experience in a lot of years of hunting, that there's no doubt in my mind, your best chance to shoot a target buck or a buck that you're chasing is going to be the first time that you hunt that stand. So think about that. Why is that? Well, mainly because you haven't been in there. You have the element of surprise, but the more times you go in there, whether you think you got in or out, with no deer detecting you, I hate to tell you this, there's deer that smelled where you walked in, they know, right? So the more you hunt a stand, it doesn't matter if it's on a food plot, if it's on a travel corridor, generally the less deer, you will see. And that's just how it goes. And that's called burning a stand. And it doesn't matter if that stands on the travel corridor or on the food plot. So when I tell a guy like, yeah, man, you have one food plot. So the last thing we probably want to do is go in and barrel in there and just start hunting that every single night. Now, what I will say to this is, if you're that guy that has limited number of food plots and, you think the travel corridors are going to be your best bet, what I would say is this: I would still absolutely have a stand on your food plot. And if you've listened to my podcast in the past, you know that I'm a firm believer, especially in high pressure states like Pennsylvania, New York, Ohio, Michigan, places like that, your best chance to shoot a big mature buck in those states, in my opinion, is the first week of season. So what I would say to you is, one, I'd encourage you to use cellular trail cameras on your food plots. And if you have a big buck showing up in daylight hours every single evening and he's patterned, then by all means, go in there and hunt that food plot, right? And what I tell guys is, don't just go hunt your food plots willy-nilly. If there's nothing that you're seeing that you want to shoot in there, then don't go in, right? Don't go into that plot. I wait. I always wait. If there's something, unless I want to shoot something there, I'm not going into that food plot. And that's just how it is. So to get back to the original, point was, these guys had just started this blanket statement: never hunt your food plots under any conditions. This just not accurate, right? There are times and places that you hunt your food plots. In my particular situation, and I know not everybody's like me, I have 30 different food plots. So I will never hunt one over and over and over again. Now here I am, last year I ended up shooting my buck and I hunted 4 days in a row all day long on a food plot and finally killed him. So there's different times of the year, different scenarios where you will, but I usually won't hunt, over and over. Now, if I get a big buck and he comes in there and he's in there the next day after I hunted, well, you know what? I'm going back in, right? And I'll just kind of let that dictate it to me. But I have stands on every single one of my food plots. Every one of my big bucks has been shot on a stand hanging over the food plot. So, I guess my point in this is, when you see that and you get that advice, guys get so wrapped up you have to be really careful when these guys give blanket statements. There's a time and a place for things. And I tell guys all the time, I hunt the snot out of my food plots, but I have 30 of them. I don't have to overpressure them. I have cellular trail cameras hanging on every single one of them. I know when there's a buck there that I want to shoot, and I go in and I hunt it. So I would tell you the same thing. It applies to you. If you have a cellular cam on your food plot and you got a big buck coming there, do not wait. They're going to change their patterns. By all means, if he's coming in daylight hours, get in on that food plot. So that's just one point I wanted to make when I see guys saying don't hunt your food plots. And the point is, and what they're trying to make is that, you're going to burn that stand if you just go hunt that food plot over and over. Well, you're going to burn that stand if you're hunting the same trail over and over. It doesn't matter what stand you hunt. If you hunt it over and over and over, eventually you're going to see less and less deer. So to me, I say hunt your food plots in certain situations, and certain situations don't. And the big thing being, if you got a big buck pattern, and I'd absolutely have a stand on every single plot for sure, because if you get a big mature buck coming there the first week of season in daylight hours, go in there and sit right on that food plot and kill him. So that's just some of my advice on stand placement and should you hunt your food plots or shouldn't you. So there's also a lot of other variables. I think we've all had these situations where we know, okay, we have a food plot, we have that perfect food plot. So I consider a perfect food plot to hunt is those 1/4 acre, 1/8 acre, 1/2 acre food plots. And a lot of my food plots are positioned between the bedding and between the destination source, right? So about 200 yards away is super thick cover bedding. And then I have my food plot. Then another 200 yards away is corn or soybeans, on the neighbors. And my particular strategy that I love is getting off that corn and soybeans, those destination fields, because that's where the deer, especially the mature bucks, want to be at dark. So how do we create a food scenario that they feel comfortable in daylight hours before they head to the destination source? And that's been really, really effective for me. So when I look at a food plot, that's always what I'm looking for. Does every situation lend itself to that? No. I have a particular piece of property. Man, there's no corn, soybean, ags for miles and miles and miles. And so our strategy there is a little bit different. But when I'm looking for a food plot, that's really what I look for. How can I get these smaller kill plots? And the big thing is, your entrance and your exit. Are you able to get into that food plot, get into that stand? And this goes for any stand. Can we get into that stand without booting deer? Whether it's when we're going in or coming out. And, the thing I love about smaller kill plots that the deer move on to the destination sources, many times those deer are out of the food plots when it's time for you to get down. They've already moved on. They're heading out to the corn and the soybeans and things like that. So you can get up. If you have a particular plot that when you get out of it, you're probably going to scare deer, you really need to be careful how often you hunt that. And I have plots like that. I have some bigger ones, and I have some stands that are set up for different wind directions that I do not go in unless I had a buck there that, hey, he's patterned, he's on this plot, the wind's good for tonight, because I know I'm only maybe going to get once or twice to hunt that stand, because I'm going to scare deer coming out at night when, they're in there feeding. So hunting destination sources is a lot different than hunting, smaller kill plots. And the big thing is your entrance and your exit. Can you get in and out, right? Can you get into that stand without walking through the cover, booting deer? And then can you get out without scaring deer that are feeding in your food plot? And so really, when you're looking at putting your plot, those are things that you should be looking at. How am I going to get into this plot? How am I going to get out? What wind direction am I going to hunt it on? Am I going to scare deer? And I'm not telling you to never plant a destination source type food plot, but I tell guys all the time, killing deer on destination sources can be a little bit more difficult. You got a bigger food source, hunting it is a little bit more difficult because you have to get out of there at night, and that can be tough, right? Because you have deer in the field. So, just be thinking of that when you do it. What's your entrance? What's your exit? Before you even put a food plot in, you're looking at where you're going to put a food plot. The first thing is, okay, how am I going to get in here and how am I going to get out? Now, that all being said, I'm not saying that don't ever put a food plot. One of my best food plots that I've killed a lot of big bucks on, I have to walk in a path I have through some decent cover but it's the only way in. And, I'm very selective on when I hunt that. And I know that, man, there's times where, I've scared deer out of there. And so it's just maybe a perfect location, not the perfect entrance and exit, but it means you're going to be more limited on how many times you can hunt it. So what I'm sitting here telling you is, if you take your time and you sometimes look and say, okay, what's my entrance and exit? You may find, hey, if I move this plot 75 yards over here, I'm going to have a better entrance and exit that I can get in and out of. Now, you may have scenarios like, listen, I just want a food plot in this area. No matter where I put it, I'm not going to have a good entrance and exit, but I'm still going to put a food plot in there that I'm either going to hunt it during the rut because it's near the cover, or I'm going to hunt it when I have a big mature buck coming. So that's just a little bit more about food plot placement and things like that. So that kind of gets into the entrance and exit. And I want to get into some things with stand placement and what I try to do on all of my plots. Is we know, and I made these mistakes early in my life where, man, we have predominantly a west wind. So, man, I'd set up 95% of my stands for a west wind, and it never failed. The first 2 weeks of season, we got a south, southeast, then you get to, and I had nowhere to go. So I've gotten really good at, when I look at plots, how could I have potentially two different stands, maybe a stand and a blind that are two different wind directions? What's my entrance and exit? How do I get in and out? Different things like that. So when you're looking at your food plots, is it a good idea? Like, hey, I could put a stand in this corner and I have a good entrance and exit, and I can hunt it on a west wind and northwest. If I put a stand over in that corner, I have a great entrance and I could hunt that on a south wind, or, and I'll tell you, you're going to be super thankful when you have that first week of season, when you got a crappy wind, like a south wind, that you have places to go and hunt. So that's just a piece of advice I'd give guys when they're setting up their food plots, to possibly set up, two different stands on opposite ends, if it's feasible, that you can hunt different wind directions. And I wanted to get into, something about with your stands, and guys will look at me and they'll call me on this because I have some plots that you can't avoid it. The one thing I try to do is anything you can do to have a stand that you avoid walking through the plot, that you don't have to walk through the middle of the food plot to get to your stand or your blind or whatever it is. Can you access that, very easily from, coming in the backside, that you don't ever have to walk into the plot itself. Now, that's more so, when you have blinds right on the food plot, it's very rare that you're going to be able to sneak into that blind or that stand if there's deer in a small quarter-acre food plot and not scare them. But that being said, it's more about scent, walking through and going in and out. The deer are eventually going to smell that, especially a big mature buck, and he's going to go nocturnal on you. So when you're setting that stuff up, I'd just say avoid trying to walk in and out of your stands by accessing through the food plot if at all possible. The next thing I want to talk about is a little bit, one of the questions I got from one of my listeners. We kind of get into this too, but screens have become very effective. People ask me, actually, the question later is like, how effective do I think they are? So I don't want to get too much into it now, but screens can absolutely be a good way for you if you do have some access issues. Maybe you got to walk by a distant field that you want to get through. They can just be a great way of creating travel corridors to give you cover as you're getting in and out of your food plots, if that's an issue. And I've done that, and I've been very effective. Screens can be a lot of different things. You can have your annual screens, but the thing I always said about annual screens, they didn't really do it for me because generally they're a temporary fix to a permanent problem, and you're just better off biting the bullet and planting a screen of switch or giant Mascanis, or planting pines, whatever it is, giving yourself cover that you can get in and out of your stands. The other thing I'll say about screens, and this isn't so much a screen, but it's something that I've taken, listened to other guys, and it makes a lot of sense to me. Now, I haven't got as crazy as some, but the idea of using cover and screens that deer, that especially bucks during the rut, cannot just look into your food plot and cruise on by. Like if they can go on top of a ridge and look in the food plot, they're not interested in eating. They're just interested. They're going to cruise by those food plots to see if there's any doe there. What can we do to make those bucks come into the food plot, right? And one thing you can do is letting the cover grow up around it, that those bucks have to come into the food plot to see if there's any deer there. And I just tell guys when they're doing that now, like think about that when you're putting food plots in, is what can you do, whether it's letting all of it just grow thick and nasty and gnarly all around it, or planting some type of screen. I've seen guys that are hunting really large food sources that they're planting big food plots, 4 or 5 acres, and then they're making cubes and they're putting screens around them, and it makes the bucks go into each one to see if there's does in there. Now, I'm not going to get that crazy, but in theory, I do see how that could potentially be really effective. Not only letting you get in and out, if you have to get out, you're not scaring every deer out of that field, but also then making those bucks come into each of those cubes to check and see. So, it's something I've thought about. I just don't plant that many large food plots that I can really play with it. But I do absolutely 100% agree that we've all watched that when those bucks are cruising. If they can just look into the food source without having to come in and check for those does, anything you can do to create cover, create, whether it's a screen, whether it grows up really thick and gnarly, or heck, you even push all your timber off that the deer just can't see into that food plot without coming in. So that was just a little tidbit. So that in a nutshell was what I wanted to talk about on stand placement. Some of the things that I do is you guys are getting out there and putting your stands up. Yeah, first of all, I'd encourage you to be safe. We wear Hunter Safety System here. I've had them for 18 years. And, we have a hanger harness that we use, which is an awesome harness for hanging all of our stands and staying safe, staying connected to the tree. And then, their regular harnesses then during hunting season. I hang lifelines in all my trees, so I'm connected from the bottom of the tree all the way to the top. So I'd encourage you. It's that time of year. I don't want to read about anybody in the newspaper, or anything like that. So just wanted to go over what my thoughts are on stand placement, hunting your plots. I hope some of these, techniques and things will help you guys. It's that time of year. So we're going to now, I'm going to wrap this up because we're going to bring a gentleman on here that I want to introduce as a new sponsor here. And it has directly to do with stands and blinds and all that good stuff. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with our guest, Emmanuel. Hello and welcome back to the Field Day Podcast. And you all heard me tee this up a little bit in the beginning, and I was talking about a special guest today. The first part of this show was all about stand placement. Should I hunt my plot? Not hunt my plot? Entrance, exit, all that good stuff. But the second half of this show, I'm really happy to announce that I have a blind sponsor, and it is 12 Point Hunting Blinds, and I'm fortunate to be joined by the owner today, Emmanuel. Emmanuel, welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning. How you doing? Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. And it's kind of funny. I really screwed up on this earlier. We've been recording for like 15 minutes and I forgot to hit record. So Emmanuel is gonna bop me on the head for forgetting to hit record on the podcast. But anyway, can you hear me, Emmanuel? Okay.
I can, yes. You zeroed out for about 3 seconds earlier, but it's back.
Okay, so we had a little pause. So anyway, so what we're talking about now, and what Emmanuel is going to talk about is the 12 Point Hunting Blinds. I'm going to let him talk about really what sets 12 Point apart from everything else. But for me, this was easy, and I'm going to tell the story of how Emmanuel and I met and how this all kind of got started. But what I do for a living and recommending products, guys, I take it really seriously. And a lot of guys who listen to me out there have went out and bought the Coons chisel plow or the mower. And I can't tell you how many emails I receive of, hey, Jason, thanks for the recommendation. It's really important to me because your credibility is everything when you do this. And I'm one of those guys, I don't switch sponsors. When I find something I like that I can really recommend, that's what I stay with. And, whether it's Matthews Bows that I've had for 12 years, Hunter Safety System for 18 years, I can go on and on. All my sponsors are long-term sponsors, and I'm looking forward to working with 12 Point for a long time. But the point of that being is there are a lot of blinds out there, and this is by far the best blind I've ever hunted out of. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about the main reasons why I love it so much, but I'm going to let Emmanuel get into and talk a little bit about, we're going to talk from a general standpoint, because all of the blinds are made with similar materials. There's obviously they have different ones from their octagon to their 6x6. They have different designs, and we can get into those a little bit more. But Emmanuel, if you don't, well, you know what? I'm jumping ahead here because I wanted to tell the story of how you and I met, and so I'll go ahead and tell that quick. And when everybody knows I do property consulting, and I got this call from Emmanuel, and he said, "Hey, we would like a consult." I'm like, "Okay, great. Where are you at?" And he's like, "Well, we'd like to do something a little bit different." He said, "We'd like to come out and take a tour of your property and show us how you set it up." And I said, "Okay, yeah, we can do that." And we had a great day together. We had a ton of fun. But I asked Emmanuel at one point, "Oh, what is it that you do for a living?" And he said, "I'm the owner of 12 Point Hunting Blinds." And my eyes lit up because I had actually been doing some work for a timber company that these are all the blinds that they used on their property. So I'd been able to hunt out of 12 Point Hunting Blinds without really knowing where exactly they came from or who did them. And I mean, all my buddies are like, "These blinds are unbelievable. These are so awesome." And I'll explain why we love them so much. But when Emmanuel said that to me, he's like, "Yeah, I'm the owner of 12 Point Hunting Blinds." My eyes lit up, and I said, "You and I need to talk." And one thing led to another, and here we are. And I'm super pumped to have 12 Point Hunting Blinds as the official sponsor of Field Days and my All In show and things like that. So, Emmanuel, I've rambled on enough here, and I'm going to let you jump in here and talk about just from what the technology is you use that with all your blinds that sets them apart.
Right. Yes. Thank you for the opportunity. So before we even get into the cool features of a blind, what they're built with. So the floor start with a heavy duty floor, which is pressure treated. So it will help with no rotting. And then the sidewalls, we have the LP Smart siding on, which has a 50-year warranty. And we put on 2 coats of quality paint to make it last longer and to help the longevity of it. And then the roof is not a flat roof. It has a slight slant on to help with rainwater and snow and that type of thing. But we coat it with a Uniflex roofing system from Sherwin-Williams, which is like a rubberized, seamless roof to help with, there's no leaking, and it's a very durable, heavy-duty roof system that we use.
Yep. Yeah, and you do that. And I think we have a little bit of a delay going on here, so you'll just have to bear with us. You do that mainly, like we said, with the slant on the roof, because I've seen this before in other blind designs that just having a flat roof can, you get a heavy snow can cause problems. So having a slanted roof's a big deal.
Oh yes, for sure it is.
And so, did you want to talk about I know the windows were a big feature part of the blind too. So, you want to talk a little bit about the windows and the different windows that guys can get?
Yes, the windows are a big deal. First of all, they're larger than the standard window size out there. So with that, you get a lot less dead spaces. And being larger, I can actually hunt. I hunt out of these blinds with my compound bow without we have an upgrade for an archery window, but I actually usually just go with our standard window because I tested it out at 8 feet high. I can shoot within 10 yards, and I like my game out at 20 or 25, so I'm usually good with that. So it's a larger window, a lot less dead spaces, and so you can spot your game quicker and make sure you spot all the game. So that's
right.
one of them. And then they're tinted. Yes, the windows are tinted, and they're in a track that's like it has an easy slide system with the I can't think of the term that we use for
The silent,
so it's in
silent
a
slide.
easy slide track. Yeah, the silent for now it's not coming to me, but easy slide windows. They're very quiet. And then we also have them in double pane, so you can get an insulated window, and it doesn't affect your sight visibility or anything like that. So nothing changes if you go with an insulated window.
Yep. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that window system that you have and why it's such a big deal. And I love it. I've hunted in a lot of different blinds, and first of all, the tinted windows are fantastic because the deer can't see in. I've hunted blinds that had different window, like where you would slide a panel and it was tinted, and you had to, it was just a pain. It was really difficult to use. But the other big thing with the windows, and in my opinion, the most important, I don't know if I have the right terminology, but I always called it the silent slide system. We had deer, Emmanuel. We had
Mhm.
deer when we were hunting that were 5 yards, 7 yards, 8 yards from the blind, that we could have those windows closed and open that window, and those deer would never hear it. They would never hear it. They would never even look up. It
Right.
was amazing to me. I mean, when we say silent, they are
Yeah.
100% silent. And that is such a big deal. I mean, that's just one of the biggest things I'm looking for when I look for in a blind is how quiet it is. And so, I wanted to touch on, because that was a really important aspect to me. And I know you talked a little bit about the interior of the blind. I know you talked about the flooring that was super quiet, that was carpeted, but
Right.
also in the interior of the blind, you have, dampening sound stuff too. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, yes. So just a little bit on that window, I did want to point out so they're in a like a metal track, and then the windows are felt lined, so it's very durable and heavy duty. And when the weather changes, hot or cold, it doesn't change it doesn't change how the window operates. Like some of the windows, with the weather change, it affects, it gets tighter or way too loose. The weather doesn't affect our windows because of the heavy duty materials we use, and then the felt line keeps them quiet.
Yep.
And yes, you're right about the foam. So we use acrylic foam on the interior, and that helps a lot for insulating the blind, and also for sound deadening. It's amazing when you're sitting in there. Like and I have hunt with my kids, and so we've had deer literally right outside the blind. We were, low tone talking, and the deer didn't hear us. It's because of the foam that's in there.
Yep. Yeah. And I'll tell you, to me, Emmanuel, that is one of the biggest deals. So I was gonna wait till you were all done to talk about my two most important things, but we just talked about them. When I'm looking at a blind, and this is because I've had bad experiences with other blinds, the two most important things to me are how quiet it is, and does it hold scent? Will it hold scent? And I'm just gonna tell a couple stories of my experiences with this blind, and why I loved it even before I met you, and was like, man, this thing is awesome, because I had some really bad experiences with other blinds. I have a particular blind, very high end, expensive blind, almost $5,000 blind, really, expensive. Emmanuel, it is the loudest blind you could ever hunt out of. Everything in it tinks, everything is metal, the floor is loud, like you can't move. And I take my dad hunting a lot, or I take my kids. And like you said, like, they're not all like us that can just move without touching anything, or to, and man, and I would get really frustrated, but I was just kind of like, I wasn't a big blind hunter for many years. This was kind of the first blind I had, and I thought all blinds were like this, right? Well, until I hunted in 12 point, I'm like, wow, these guys get it, right? These guys get it. And we in that blind, you can move your chair, you can, whether you're crossbow hunting or rifle hunting or bow hunting, you can move without making sound, right? Between the silent slide system on the windows to being able to move in the blind, it is amazing to me how it takes the sound out of everything. And that to me is a huge deal. I'm an archery hunter, so I want them close, but even if you're a rifle hunter, you don't want to be making
Hmm.
loud sounds. So they've thought about everything that they can in this blind to make it as quiet as it possibly can be. So I appreciate that, Emmanuel. That was the first thing I want to talk about. So do you want to say anything before I move on to my next big thing?
You covered it well as far as that's concerned. Yes.
Yep. Okay, perfect. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about was the scent protection. Now, this is something I didn't even really know was possible, right? Because I've hunted out of other blinds, and if deer come downwind, they smell you, right? They're going to catch you. What we realized early on, and again, this was before you were ever sponsored. My buddy was hunting one night out in one of these on the property that I had, and he called me. He's like, dude, he's like, these blinds are scent proof. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, we had 30 deer around us tonight, all around us, behind us, beside us, all around us. We had all the windows closed, right? If you open the windows and things, that's obviously gonna let scent out. But he's like, we had all the windows closed. And he's like, I swear to God, they didn't smell us. They had no idea we were there, And so as I started hunting, it's like, holy cow, like you keep these windows shut. It is literally like almost makes you scent proof, and that to me was amazing. And those to me as a bow hunter and a hunter, the quiet and the scent protection are the two biggest things. And I can tell guys, like they were unbelievable when it came to both. And the scent protection to me was not something that I even really thought. People talk about that a lot, right? Oh yeah, ours are scent proof. The deer won't smell you. And I've just come to realize that most people are full of it. Like, okay, yeah, they're just saying that because there's no way to really prove it. Well, man, with your blinds, we proved it over and over and over again that those deer could not smell us when we were in that blind and had the windows closed. So that to me are the two big things. And man, 12 Point, you hit it out of the park because it is by far the best as far as quiet and scent protection that I've ever hunted out of.
Thank you. Yeah, we found it that way too, but it was a work in progress. They haven't always been that scent proof. And like I said, it's been a work in progress, just improving over the years, with the experience we gain in the field and then coming back and changing some things. And that's exactly what we have found. There can be deer downwind and they never scent us. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And so I know I jumped the gun there, so I'm gonna get back to you talking as well, Emmanuel. If there's, I know, let's talk platforms. You have different options with the platforms and heights and what kind guys can get. So do you want to talk a little bit about the platforms? Then maybe we'll get into some of the different options, some of the different blinds that you do have, because you do have guys like you said can get different windows, right? They can call
Right.
and say, hey, I like the archery windows and things like that. So let's talk a little bit about the platforms. You do have a trap door system. I want you to talk a little bit about that because that's a really cool feature that you guys have that's potential for guys. So talk about those platforms and some of those other features that I just mentioned.
Sure. So as far as for the towers, so to speak, to set the blinds on, there's a few different options that we have. Normally we go 8 feet high, we can go 10, 12, 14, 16. We can probably even customize to 20 or 24 foot if you need that. But some of the materials we use, we have different options: 4x4 pressure treated 4x4s, or we have also a um, all metal stand platform with a ladder, everything metal, with the bracings all metal. So that would never wear out. It's powder coated, and then our standard blind comes with the door on the side. But like you mentioned, we do have an option for a trap door for the bottom entry, and that is a really cool feature because you can wrap your tripod or your stand, the legs that it's sitting on, you can wrap that with the camouflage netting and then walk under your blind and climb up a ladder and in through the trap door. And there can be deer right outside the blind. And if they'll never know that you entered the blind. So that's a cool feature on that. Something I did not mention, we have taller walls than a lot of blind manufacturers. So you can stand up in there and shoot a compound bow and you don't have to stoop. Like, I'm not sure how you found it. You're a tall guy, I found out when I was out there. So I'm not sure if you have to stoop, but you're taller than most people. For me, I'm around 6 foot and there's no stooping for me. So I don't know, how did you find it?
I was good. I'm 6'6" and I had no problem standing and shooting. So
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did want to say too
So those are
yeah, I was gonna say, Emmanuel, on your I just wanted to mention the one thing that I really liked. I take my dad hunting who has some mobility issues and and obviously
okay.
younger kids, things like that. And those the entrance that you guys have, the steps, very easy. They have a railing on them. You get to a platform, made it super easy for my dad, my kids to get in and out of the blind. The trapdoor thing is a cool thing. I didn't personally go with that because of taking my dad and younger kids
Mm-hmm.
hunting. It's just what I wanted. But if it was just me hunting, I would absolutely 100% go with the trap door. But I figured with taking somebody that's a little bit more mobility impaired, and the railing system that you have makes it super easy to get in and out of those blinds.
Yes, it does. You're right. So did you want me to touch a little bit on some of the features, like the add-on features? Um,
Yes, please.
so yeah, so some of the things. So even though our windows standard are tinted, but some people like to have a clear window just because at dusk and dawn they have better visibility with a clear window. So we do that if some people want that. And then something that helps is we have a blackout system that you can put over the window. It's like a curtain that goes over the window to black out your silhouette. So if you do have a clear window, then you can still put the blackout on, and it helps with visibility for the deer to see into the blind. So that is an option. And then we have the awnings that go over the windows that help with the rainfall. If it's raining or sleeting or snowing, it doesn't ping up against your window, and it helps with keeping your windows dry. And then we have shelving for interior shelving for your coffee mug, if you have a coffee mug, or bullets or whatever, and chairs that go, that we can have with the blinds and all that good stuff. So those are some of the features.
Yeah. So I just wanted to touch on what you said with the window options and the tinted windows versus the clear windows. And there's advantages and disadvantages to both that I found. The clear windows, deer can see in, they can see you. And that's why I've always liked the tinted windows. But you're correct when you say that when it starts to get dark and you have all those tinted windows closed, it gets darker in that blind quicker than it does outside. What I've always done at that point in time then is I open the windows up. Like I know, we're getting away kind of from the scent stuff, but for me personally, I love having the tinted windows, especially having, my dad who moves around a lot, my kids who are moving around a lot. Like I wanted when there's deer out there that they're not catching movement in those blinds. But like you said, guys can have those options. And that is the negative with the tinted windows. When it starts to get dark, it can get harder to see, out those tinted windows. And we've just simply always opened those up. But the other stuff you mentioned, the shelf holder is awesome. We used it for our drinks, our hot chocolate, or whatever it was, our like you said, bullets, the window awnings, a ton of different things that you can do. And so so I'll let you go. Let's talk about real quick, let's just go down through the different blinds that you have, your octagon, your 6x6, those, and just maybe talk a little bit about the differences of each of them.
Right. Yeah. So 6x6 is a very popular size because all right. So I'll back up a little bit. A lot of people like the octagon ones, and they are a very nice blind. But a 6x6 is very popular because it's easier to hunt out of with a couple of your kids or a friend or two, a cameraman or whatever. So it just has a little bit more space. The octagon has a little bit less space, but it's still 6 foot across, but it has the corners cut off. So there's just a little bit less space. And with our window system in the square ones, you can still have the 360 degree because there's so few dead spaces. And then we have a 5x5, which is the same as a 6x6, a little smaller, just a little bit tighter, but you can still easily hunt out of it with 2 people. So those are the main hunting blind for the deer. Well, we have a new one that we came out with. It's a little lower than the standard, and there's less windows, and they're a little bit smaller, more just for hunting rifle. The people that just do rifle hunting, a little less money. It's, there's always you have to have some blinds that are a little bit less money. So the rifle hunting blind is less money. And then we have we also do duck blinds, and we have started something new just the end of last year, which was we took our blind and made ice fishing shacks out of it. So there's a lot of things you can do with it.
Yeah, perfect. And so I know today's an awesome day. I got to talk hunting blinds, and I actually am getting 2 hunting blinds delivered today. And I'm getting the octagon and the 6x6 as well. So I'm excited. I've only ever hunted out of the octagon. So I'm anxious because you said to me, you're like, I think you're really gonna like the 6x6, So I am excited, but I mean it's gonna be hard to top the octagon for me because man, we hunted many times with 3 people in it, a kid and a cameraman and his dad and things like that. So they are super roomy. The octagon for me, I got the bow hunting window, a couple of the bow hunting windows and things like that, and kind of tailored it that way. But I am looking forward to hunting out of the 6x6. I put the 6x6 on. I'm putting it on one of our plots, but also an area where I can see a long ways that we could rifle hunt out of it, bow hunt out of it, do different things. But those are the two that I'm getting. And I guess the point being here is, they have a lot of different options. The price point on these blinds, when I was looking online, you're very reasonable. Like I said, the blind that I have that I do not like, I actually hate it, was almost $5,000.
Mhm.
Um, your blinds are in that range of 3,100. Tell me if I'm wrong. 3,100 to 37, 38, 3,900, and in that range is the price of your blinds.
Yes, you're correct. That's right.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, and like I said, extremely well built. They've thought of things, and I loved hearing the part where you said, Emmanuel, about, I've seen a lot of blind companies come and go, and they'll go out and they'll just make one or two blinds, and that's what they have for how many ever years. You guys are constantly evolving. Like you said, you took it and you saw, okay, hey, we can make this better. We can make this better. We can make it more scent free. We developed this blind. We have this blind. And I love the fact, and I don't know how you guys handle this, or whether you like them online or you like guys to call you, but I would say, hey, give the guys at 12 Point a call and you can talk to them about what are the different options you have, and they can really explain,
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, well, if you're doing this and you're 22 years old, and maybe you want the trap door entrance, right? And what
Mhm.
height platform do you want? And I love the fact that the older I get, the higher I like less I like to climb. So like I'm good with an 8 footer, but he said, oh, we'll go up 20 feet. I'm good with that, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different features, and it's what I love about this company. I love what they're doing. They're constantly pushing to do better. I don't know how they're going to keep topping what I've hunted out of, and I'm excited, to have these on my property this year and hunt exclusively out of them. But yeah, I mean, I know I'm rambling here, but I absolutely love these blinds. I love what you're doing. And I'm excited for the future for us and anybody who buys one of these. And I'll tell you a funny story. You've been around for how long now? How long have you guys been in business?
Since we started with our very first blind, it's probably 6 or 8 years,
Yeah.
something like that. I didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. And so fairly new company and locate, but I was on two different consults this year in different states, and guess what blind I saw sitting on their property? It was a 12 Point hunting blind. And I said, I know that company, but they're getting more and more well known. And that's because when guys buy their blinds, you know, word of mouth spreads pretty darn quick, and guys start talking
Oh
about
yeah.
the quality and the price point and the customer service, and you guys, even, I know it's within reason, but you'll even go out and set some of these blinds up, correct, for guys, like if
Oh
that's
yeah.
something they want.
Oh yes. Yeah, we can do that definitely. I mean, we've traveled to, all over the place, different states. So yeah, that's not a problem. We can set them up.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a big deal to me. The older I get, I'm kind of like, man, like, I've put big blinds in, and it can be a lot of work. And they have all the equipment. They're
Oh
going to
yeah.
be here today, and they're going to be here with their forklifts and their tractors, and they're just going to take these blinds right in for me and get them set up. So a lot of awesome features that you don't get with a lot of companies at 12 Point. And Emmanuel, just tell the listeners, how can they find out more about you? I know, you got your website. Can you give a phone number? What are the ways that people can reach out to you?
Yes. Phone number. Well, the website 12pointhuntingblinds.com. There's a phone number which is 610-900-6280, or you can email Jason, which is not this Jason, JD we call him, which is JD at 12pointhuntingblinds.com.
Yep. And yeah, and JD's coming out. He's the one coming out my way today. His name's Jason as well. So different Jason. But yeah, so again, that
Right.
website address is 12pointhuntingblinds.com. And you can see all the different blinds that they have, the pricing. And I encourage you to reach out because they can really tailor it, and do different things with the blinds that a lot of companies don't do. What you see is what you get. These guys will work with you and really customize the blinds. And the price point is great. The customer service is fantastic. So yeah, so I don't know, Emmanuel, is there anything else you want to talk about in your blinds that maybe we didn't get to or didn't mention?
Well, one thing that I did want to mention, and we get this all the time, and more and more and more, is appearance. You can look at all the different blinds on the market, and they all look like a hunting blind for the most part. But I would recommend, before you buy a hunting blind, is to go inside and sit inside one of the blinds before you purchase, because we get that all the time. Like, man, we see your blind, but we didn't know what it is until we set in it. Now we're hooked. We're going to switch out our other blinds with this blind, but they first had to sit in the blind. So I recommend before you purchase any blinds, sit in a 12-point hunting blind somewhere at a dealer location or at our store, or your friend's blind that bought already or whatever. Try to sit in one before you purchase and then make your decision.
Emmanuel, I think that is an awesome point, because that is, I mean, when I looked at them when they were, like you said, I look at a blind. Okay, that looks like a nice blind, right? On the outside, they all kind of look, oh yeah, that looks like a nice blind. But you are 100% right. When 12-point had me hooked was when I sat in it and I hunted in it, and I'm like, this thing is unbelievably awesome. And again, it came down to being so quiet. The silent slide window systems, the everything you did to soundproof it, just had me hooked from the get-go. So I think that's a great point, Emmanuel, of if you're looking at blinds, and that's what I'd say, I'll put 12-point up against any blind I've ever sat in, ever, as far as the features that they have, how quiet it is, and things like that. So Emmanuel, it's we're right about a half hour. That's what we said we were going to do, and it went fast. I know you were a little nervous about your first podcast, but hopefully I made it easy. I thought you did great explaining the product, and I appreciate you being on today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep. And we'll be talking soon. And I'm gonna wrap this up here. I'm gonna be coming back here. I'm gonna let Emmanuel go. And I have 2 questions from 2 of my listeners that I want to go over those questions. But Emmanuel, I'm gonna get going here, because guess what? I'm going to meet Jason and put 2 12-point hunting blinds up. So I got things to do.
Yes, you got it. Sounds good. Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and we'll see you.
Yep. All right. Again, that's 12pointhuntingblinds.com. I encourage you to reach out to these guys and see what they might be able to do for you. Again, Emmanuel, thank you for being here. We're going to take a quick break, thank a couple of our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
I plant over 30 acres in food plots every single year, and I cannot afford to be losing time with equipment that is not reliable or gets the job done. And I'm proud to have Coons Engineering as my equipment sponsor here at Field Days. Their equipment is built like a tank, from their mower that I can create a new plot to mow my perennial plots, to their cultipackers, to the chisel plow that you see me using all the time that I use with just my quad to break ground and plant new food plots. If you're looking for good quality food plot equipment, I encourage you, check out the very best at KUNZENG.com.
Okay, we're back, and I hope you guys enjoyed Emmanuel. Emmanuel, thanks for being on the podcast. And what I wanted to do is I take a couple questions. So I got 2 really good questions here that I wanted to discuss today. And the first one, and again, I'd say to everybody, if you have a question for me, you can send that in to Jason at fielddaysmedia.com, Jason at wiredoutdoors.com, our contact on magnetoutdoors.com. You can get it to me however, but if you'd like to submit a question for me to answer on the podcast, I'd be happy to take it. So I'm going to get into the first one here, and I have Jerry from Coshocton, Ohio, and he says, "Hey Jason, I've been listening to your podcast since the beginning and appreciate all the advice. It has made me a better plotter. I've seen a bunch of seed companies recently go after companies selling seeds that are coated. I know you're a firm believer in coated seeds, and so am I, but can you really explain the difference? Thanks for taking my question." So I am going to, and I have seen that. I have seen seed companies out there, and they say pure seed or no coatings, no fillers, no junk. And what I first want to start with in coated seed, and I'm not, there's guys that can give a much better scientific explanation. As you guys know, I'm an in the field guy. Like, I compare what works, what doesn't work, what works better. And I've been planting coated seed. And if you look at probably all the top brands out there, they are coating their seed, and they're doing that for a reason. Everybody needs to understand a food plot seed company is not going to stay in business if you're not successful, period. If you buy the seed and it doesn't grow for you, you're not going to be successful. And that means we're not going to be successful. So I want to say to guys, everything we look at what we do at Magnet Outdoors is how can we give everybody an added advantage that they can be a more successful food plotter. And what I'll say with food plot seed coating is this. I don't plant any seed without coating. Now, when we're talking coating, we're talking your clovers, your brassicas, your tiny seeds. We're not talking your oats, your winter wheat, your cereal grains, and things like that. We're talking your tiny seeds that we're going to coat. And I've got to experience this firsthand. And what I would say to everybody, and again, this is the unscientific explanation. I'm the in the field guy, that having coated seed, if you plant uncoated seed, sure, you can have a great food plot. If all the conditions are right, if everything goes well, you get the rain that when you need it, all those things, you can have a food plot that's just as good as somebody who planted a coated seed. Now, I'm going to take you back to last year. And last year here in Pennsylvania, anybody listening to me, they know we had a bad drought. There was a lot of guys that had plot failures. A lot of guys that I talked to that were planting uncoated seed. My food plots did fantastic. And coated seed is a way of giving you an insurance policy, right? It's not an end all. If you plant a seed and you don't get rain for a month and a half, yeah. But I've planted coated seed, didn't get rain for 2.5, 3 weeks. And when we got that rain, it blew up. That coating is going to protect that seed during, severe drought. The other thing that it does, and I heard a guy trying to explain this, and he explained it all wrong. He was saying, oh, there's a company out there saying that, that their coating will automatically, it has moisture and it will germinate your seed with the coating. That's incorrect. What the coating does, and our coating at Magnet Outdoors, it actually absorbs water to a certain point. And what that does is it protects from a false germination. It protects, when you get heavy dew and heavy fog and maybe just a little bit of rain. A worst case scenario is when you get a little bit of rain, you get germination, you don't get rain for a while. Man, that plot's toast. Where coated seed will absorb water, the coating that we use will absorb water until it's ready to germinate, and there's a significant amount of moisture to get very good germination. So there's a lot of different things that coating does, but I've told guys before, I've watched guys last year, for an example, so many guys' plots failed. Mine did not. And this has been for years. I've watched, and we're not going to be successful unless you're successful. So everything we look at Magnet Outdoors is not a way that, hey, how can we rip a guy off, right? Like, how can we charge a guy for this? And I'll see those guys say, oh, we're only selling pure seed and we sell more of it. Well, they need to sell more of it because their germination rate's not as good as what a coated seed is. And that's a fact. So, and I hopefully that explains it. You can go to our website at Magnet Outdoors. We have a whole thing. We call our coating seed security. But in essence, there's a lot of things that go into it, and it gives you a little bit of an added advantage in those not perfect conditions. And to me, that's what food plotting is about. Like we're going out, we're planting in the woods, we're planting on new ground. The rain, that time of year, you might not get enough rain. It's going to give you added advantage that when other food plots, uncoated seed, are not going to make it, your coated seed is going to have a better chance at making it. So anyway, that in a nutshell is why we use coated. We always will. It's not about ripping you off. It's about you being successful and us giving you every added advantage when it comes to planting your food plot that food plot seed's going to make it. All right. So hopefully that answers it. So I want to thank you for that question. Again, that was Jerry who sent that from Coshocton, Ohio. So thank you. The next question I have is this is from Brad in Boonesboro, Maryland. And he says, love the podcast and information. My question is, how important do you think screening is, and is it really worth it? Also, when is your next documentary coming out? I've been watching for teasers, but haven't seen anything yet. So let me, first of all, thank you, Brad. Let me answer the first question on screening. We talked a little bit about this earlier. Screening can 100% be effective. And it depends on the scenario. And it depends on, what you're trying to accomplish. But, if you're saying, hey, I want to create a corridor that hides me from a wide open field to get in and out of my stand. Yes, it can absolutely be effective in that instance. You got to be careful. Like I said before, I'm not a big fan of annual screens because it's just a 1-year solution and you usually have a permanent problem. So I usually say bite the bullet and, be looking at Switch or Giant Mascanus or, Pine Tree, whatever you want to do to create that screen. There's a lot of ways that you can do it, but I'd be looking at a permanent solution. But certainly I would say a well thought out plan, screening can absolutely be effective. And that's for, accessing your stands. The other thing I talked about too was screening of some sort to hide your plot that bucks just can't cruise by on a ridge and look down in and see if there's any doe, make those deer come into the plot to see what's there. There's a lot of different uses for screening. I think the big thing is just sitting down and really thinking about it. And, it can be a lot of work. Some screens can be very expensive. But yeah, the answer to your question is yes, I 100% believe that screens can be effective in the certain scenarios. And I feel like sometimes guys watch YouTube videos and they say, okay, this guy's planting screens. I'm going to plant screens everywhere without really thinking it out. And, then it can be a waste of time. So like anything you're doing, from your food plot, your stand placement, have a well thought out plan as to why you want that screen there, what it's going to do for you, what the purpose of it is, and work your way back. So anyway, so yes, I do think screens are very effective. And the second part of that question, I'm glad you asked that, was when's the next documentary coming out? That's going to be coming out in September. I'm super excited about it. It's going to be all in. And this year we titled it No Fear. And it's going to go into the story of launching Magnet Outdoors and all the testing and things that we did to get the Food Plot Seed Company off the ground, and then chasing and shooting my first buck over one of my seed blends. And that's going to be the storyline. It's a good one. I had to work hard. I hunted, I think, 60 times to finally kill my buck this last year in PA, but it's a cool story. I hope you'll watch it. It'll be coming out in September. It'll be on Carbon TV. It'll be on Waypoint TV. It'll be on all of our YouTube channels and Roku channel as well. So anyway, so that's the two questions. And the last thing I want to say one more time, we do have the Whitetail Habitat Extravaganza coming up the end of January. It will sell out. So I'd encourage you, if you're interested in coming to that, it'll be in Northwest PA, Shippensville, Pennsylvania. Last one of these days, man, I had guys from all over the United States come. It sold out in about 6 hours. Now we expanded. I think last time I could only fit like 150 people, and we sold out in 6 hours. We are taking 500 people. We went to a much bigger facility. We have 2 guest speakers this time. You won't have to listen to me talk all day, but we have myself. I'll be talking about food plots and strategy and techniques. And then we have Jason Lapardis is going to be here, and he's going to be talking about habitat, going to be talking about timber stand improvement, all the cover type things. So it's going to be a great day. If you're interested in joining and being a part of that, visit magnetoutdoors.com. You can buy your tickets right there. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up here. It's that time of year. I just wanted to show everybody. I got this yesterday, and that is my PA hunting license. So I'm ready to rock here and get going. And I did want to say, too, another big announcement in Pennsylvania is Sunday hunting is finally legal. Now, I know there's going to be some guys upset about it. Personally, on my end, I'm super excited about it, mainly because for me personally, it wasn't a huge deal because I get to hunt every single day, and actually I kind of look forward to having a Sunday off. But I always think of the guy who, works Monday through Friday and he's got 2 days to hunt. I just think it's a great thing for hunting itself. So this guy's super pumped about Sunday hunting. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up with that. I hope you guys all are out. It's that time of year. We're getting ready to plant, getting those plots ready. So I want to wish everybody a lot of luck, and we'll be back next Monday with a new podcast. And thank you all for listening.